Hello everyone, welcome to the PMP exam question and answers practice session for July. So just like the previous months, we would be solving 5 medium to high difficulty level PMP exam style questions today in this video. And for each of the 5 questions, we would be doing a detailed explanation on the correct and the incorrect answer choices. The intent of this exercise is firstly to test how well you are prepared for the PMP exam. So for example, you can use this scorecard that you see on screen to test your performance across the 5 questions. And secondly, the goal of this exercise is to develop your understanding on the correct process and strategy for solving PMP exam questions efficiently. Please give this video a like and let's get started with question number 1.
Right, so question number 1, guys, please pause the video and try to answer it before we solve this together. Right, so let's get started. Multiple unexpected obstacles have emerged simultaneously on the Scrum board during a hybrid project implementation. Various team members have identified several distinct issues, okay, very important key term for this question, stemming from a compliance requirement introduced by the waterfall component of the project. So since it was a hybrid project, it has a waterfall component and it has a agile component, right? So the team members of the project have identified several distinct issues stemming from a compliance requirement introduced by the waterfall component of the project. So which parameter is likely to be highest in the risk assessment? Manageability, dormancy, connectivity, and controllability. Okay. So to understand and answer this question correctly, guys, you need to sort of have an idea of what each of these terms mean when it comes to risk management. Okay. So when it comes to manageability, it is more about how you are managing the risk response for a particular risk. So the risk response have been identified and you have to manage it now. So for each of that risk response, you need to have like a RACI, which is responsible, accountable, contribution, let's say contributor in a proper sort of nomenclature for RACI, and keep informed for I, right? So those kind of things comes in the manageability part. Okay. However, for this question, it is a bit premature to move into that stage where you will actually start to manage the risk by identifying a risk response. Okay. So manageability might be a very close answer choice, but it is an incorrect answer choice, guys, primarily because to manage a risk properly, you need to sort of identify the risk owner, risk response, etc., etc. Okay. So manageability is not the correct answer here because it is just being identified. Okay. So the next step after you have identified a risk, which is to assess the risk, okay, in terms of the impact, in terms of the connections of that risk with respect to cost, with respect to scope, with respect to schedule, etc., etc. Okay. So manageability comes after that. Once you have done that assessment, you have formulated a risk response and then you manage that. So that is why manageability is an incorrect answer choice. For the same reason, dormancy is also incorrect because keeping a risk dormant, or let's say in terms of having that dormancy parameter in your risk assessment, means that there is a highly likely possibility that the risk will stay dormant and you probably don't need any action. So that is why it is a bit extraneous and it is an incorrect answer choice. Okay. Coming to option C, connectivity, this is the correct answer choice to this question because as I was explaining that once you have identified the risk, the next step is to assess the risk, and in terms of the assessment, what you do is you sort of try to assess and connect the impact of the risk to various parts of your project verticals. Let's say cost, scope, schedule, resources, stakeholder, communication, procurement, etc., etc. Okay. So C is the correct answer choice to this question. D is also incorrect, primarily because controllability is something which again comes after implementation, because once you implement, then you sort of control the action and ensure that that action actually is delivered by the way it was designed to achieve the intended results, right? So that is the controllability part of the risk, and that is the reason why D is also an incorrect answer choice. Okay. So the correct answer to this question is option C, which is connectivity, and this is the parameter which is likely to be the highest in risk assessment because the various team members have identified several distinct issues, okay, stemming from a compliance requirement. Now you need to have that interconnection of those issues and try to assess and identify what kind of interconnections these issues would be having with the various verticals of your project. And that is why connectivity is the parameter which is likely to be the highest in the risk assessment for this scenario. So the correct answer to this question is option C.
Now, if you are preparing for the PMP exam, I would suggest that you check out my PMP exam preparation courses on Udemy. All the courses are very highly rated amongst the students, and many PMP exam aspirants have passed their PMP exams with the help of these courses. You can check the reviews on Udemy, and all the relevant links will be provided in the description section of this video. And now let's move on to question number 2.
Okay, so question number 2, guys, it's a bit of a verbose question. Read it very carefully and try to answer it before we solve this together. As usual, you can pause the video here if you wish to. Okay, so let's get started. The Chief Technology Officer at Organization B reports a 45% decline in system performance and substantial increase in security incidents for platform release 2.0. Okay, so there was a platform which got released, the second version of the platform, and the CTO of the organization reports a 45% decline in system performance and substantial increase in security incidents. So everything is going bad for this release. Okay. So support teams are receiving direct escalations from internal users, and the cybersecurity division reports an elevated number of vulnerability alerts. So that is also something which is quite concerning. The development team is currently working on platform release 2.1, which is the next version supposedly after platform 2.0, which is a limited set of patches and security fixes. So they are trying to fix all these issues that is happening in version 2.0 with this upgrade and patch release for 2.1. So the CTO contacts the team here and requests a comprehensive disclosure for the release of 2.1 specifications. So the CTO is sort of concerned, and he or she wants to see that what was the parameters or the features or the product features for 2.0 and what are the security patches or the fixes which version 2.1 brings with it. And that person needs to be aware of this difference and needs to be sanguine that whether the improvements that has been suggested with the 2.1 will be enough to fix the issues that 2.0 is facing. Okay, so that is your problem scenario. How should the project manager interact with this stakeholder, which is the CTO? Let's look at the options one by one. Option A. Highlight their participation in the specification approval process for both the releases. Okay, it's good. You can do that. Reinforce that authorized decision makers had provided formal authorization for version 2.0 deployment after thorough review. Okay, now that's a bit redundant, right? The first part of this option is okay, which is you are highlighting their participation. So you are highlighting that the CTO will be participating in the specification approval process for both the releases, which is good. However, this is very redundant, right? Okay, you know what? 2.0 was deployed after thorough review. So it is not my responsibility that something is going wrong with that. So even if you ask the CTO or let him know that, okay, look, the 2.0 version was released after a thorough review, we can't do anything about it, etc., etc. Okay, is that a productive argument or productive reasoning you want to do with the stakeholder? Because it is a bit redundant and it was not adding any value to the concerns that the CTO is trying to solve by asking for participation for these platform releases of 2.0 and 2.1. Okay, so that is why option A is redundant and it's an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option B. Analyze the foundational research and technical assessments that validated the strategic justification for 2.0 initiative. Okay, that is also some kind of digging or data mining you can do for root causing the problem that is being faced by version 2.0 at the moment. Initiate the conversation by exploring how the stakeholder contributed to these validation activities. Probably you can do it. It's not the best option, but let's see if there is any further options which are better than this. So basically what option B is suggesting is you do your background check and data mining in terms of understanding the foundational research and technical assessment that validated the strategic justification, because if that was not correct, and the technical assessments on the basis of which 2.0 was signed off was incomplete or sort of did not meet the requirements of the version, then it's a problem, right? For that, you might want to initiate the conversation by exploring what was the input of the CTO during those version releases. Okay, so that is something option B is suggesting. So I know it's not an ideal answer choice, or let's say we might want to reject it because it's a vague answer choice. But again, as I always explained to you in the previous sessions across multiple months that we are doing this session now, that you as the PMP exam candidate, you are expected to select the best possible answer choice given the 4 options. Okay. Your job is not to sort of critique an answer choice just because it doesn't seem right. Okay. So you have to treat it very objectively. So let's see. Okay. Option C. Express understanding of their frustration while pointing out that this scenario was anticipated and formally captured as a potential operational consequence in the major risk release documentation. Again, a redundant action, right? Okay, you empathize that, okay, Mr. CTO or Mr. CTO, I understand your frustration and you have pointed out. You sort of point out and communicate to the CTO that this scenario was anticipated and formally captured. Then why didn't you take any action, right? It doesn't make any sense, okay? So again, option C is, that is why, incorrect, because it's a quite redundant answer choice. Let's look at option D. Arrange for development team to recreate the final system demonstration of version 2.0 to address the CTO's information needs. Again, it is sort of a post-mortem analysis. Look what the CTO is asking here. The CTO is asking here to have a comprehensive disclosure of the releases of 2.0 and 2.1. Now, you are doing a post-mortem demonstration of version 2.0, which is already being released in the market, and what good will it have to have a final demonstration now? And here in option D, nowhere it's being stated that what is the plan in terms of addressing the concern of the stakeholder, that the stakeholder wants to know that what are the improvement actions that are going for option 2.1 or version 2.1, let's say, right? So that is why option D is also an incorrect answer choice, because again, it's quite redundant. So surprisingly and interestingly, the correct answer to this question is option B. And the reason for that is option A, option C, and option D, they are sort of more incorrect. Okay, that is, if that is the right word. And that is what you might not be very happy with, guys. And again, as an instructor, my job is not to make you happy with sort of solving Q&As, but make you aware that you will get in your PMP exam such questions where the correct answer choice may not look the ideal answer choice in the first assessment. However, in lack of having any better answer choice, you have to go with option B, which is the best answer choice you can select, because option A, option C, and option D, all of them hint to something which is quite redundant and which doesn't directly address the pain point of the CTO. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option B.
Now, before we move on to question number 3, guys, I would like to introduce you to my PMP exam study group on YouTube. It's a monthly subscription based membership model, and you will get daily posts on highly nuanced tips and tricks to prepare for your PMP exam, which are generally not discussed on my YouTube videos. You can try it out for a few months and cancel anytime if you wish. Feedback from students for this study group has been excellent.
Right. So question number 3, guys, please pause the video, read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. Okay, so let's get started. Multiple tasks continue to accumulate in the sprint's backlog. Impediment status despite the Scrum team's continuous effort to resolve them. Okay, so tasks are creeping up and it's accumulating in the backlog of a particular sprint despite the Scrum team's continuous effort to resolve the same. Now, the sprint retrospective identifies that all the roadblocks originate from a specific product owner's lack of engagement. So this is the person who is not engaging with the sprint or with the team or with the project, and that is the reason why things are not going as per plan. Previously, the Scrum Master has attempted to coach this individual, but they continue to demonstrate non-collaborative behavior. So it's a difficult person to deal with in this situation. So what should the project manager do next? Okay, so let's look at the options one by one. Option A, request the product owner supervisor to provide financial reimbursement corresponding to the sprint delays caused by insufficient stakeholder participation. Okay, this is preposterous, right? You can't ask for these kind of financial reimbursements or penalties within an organization. I hope none of you have selected this answer choice because it is against basic decorum of a matured project management organization, right? It might happen in sort of a mom and pop situation. However, in a standard professional project management environment, you cannot really ask for financial reimbursements. Let's look at option B. Conduct stakeholder mapping to locate a supportive senior executive, okay, who can influence the product owner. Possible, you can sort of do a stakeholder mapping exercise, probably check your stakeholder register and find a supportive senior executive who can influence the product owner. Might be their functional manager, might be their HR manager, basically an escalation. And time and again, I keep on referring across this Q&A sessions that escalation is the last resort to do, okay. However, please keep in mind that if there is a need to escalate and there is a need to influence, you should do it, okay. However, influence is basically not an escalation, okay. So you are not escalating to your project sponsor, right? You are trying to ask for help, and influence is not equivalent to escalation. Okay, I hope you understand that. So it is asking for help needed where you are sort of not able to create an influence yourself because maybe the person is at your level and you need someone above your hierarchy to influence that person. Okay, so B looks like a possible answer choice. However, let's look at option C. Direct the development team to discover alternative stakeholders capable of circumventing the product owner's obstruction. Again, this is something which ideally you should not do. If you circumvent the product owner's obstruction and try to do it yourself, then again, you are not being able to make that role or that person accountable, and you can't sort of bypass a product owner and start taking decisions yourself just because your product owner is not getting engaged, okay? Because otherwise you are filling the shoes of the product owner and you are filling the shoes of the project manager, which might be a conflict of interest as well, right? So that is why option C is incorrect. Let's look at option D. Develop a stakeholder communication matrix categorizing participants based on their demonstrated commitment to project success. Again, unnecessary documentation and intellectualization, let's say. So developing a stakeholder communication matrix, categorizing participants, okay, you can do that exercise, spend 1.5 hours getting this done, but what good will it do? Okay, you will have a nice fancy document ready, but will it drive any decisions, or will it drive any sort of solution to the problem that you are facing now? Or will it drive any solution to the problem that you are facing now? Questionable, right? So probably that is also not the correct answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option B, which is to conduct stakeholder mapping to locate a supportive senior executive who can influence the product owner. And this is a positive influence you are trying to do. Asking for help needed. Do not mistake this for escalation, because typically you are not escalating here, because generally escalation happens with the project sponsor or project executive. You are asking for help in terms of influencing positively, which is not a bad thing. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is option B.
And now let's move on to question number 4.
Okay, so question number 4, guys. Please read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. Again, you can pause the video here if you wish to as well. Okay, so let's get started. The annual performance metrics indicate that rival organizations are reducing service costs significantly for a business, okay? So the enterprise is experiencing client attrition during the execution phase of a software implementation initiative, and it becomes evident that the funding department will not achieve adequate return on their capital allocation. So because of this client attritions, a project which is midway, which is in the execution stage, they are forecasting at this point in time, it has not happened actually, but it's a forecast that the funding department will not achieve adequate rate of return on their capital allocation. Which 2 actions should the project manager do to adapt the project to these new conditions? And you have to choose 2 options. So in your PMP exam, for these kind of questions, you will always be provided with the number of options you need to choose from the 5 or 6 options, or let's say 4 options that will be provided to you. Okay. Right. So let's start evaluating the options one by one. Option A, gradually substitute internal resources with offshore consulting professionals who can deliver services at 50% reduced compensation rates or lower. Okay, so this is incorrect, guys, because firstly, during the execution stage of the project, doing this replacement at this point in time might call for a lot of complexities in terms of contracting, in terms of the way your procurement contracts or procurement management plans are designed. So that is the first part of it. And secondly, even if they are giving 50% reduced compensation rates, there is nowhere it is stated in the question that the problem, or let's say the high cost which the project is facing at the moment, is due to people resources, or let's say due to service or due to labor, right? So what if the high cost which the project is currently facing is probably due to some new cybersecurity regulations, or let's say due to some kind of software or hardware infrastructure which they have built. So people, of course, is one part of it. However, it is not stated in the question that the current project is facing any problems, or let's say high cost, due to people only, right? And people is not the only parameter that influences the cost of the project, right? So that is why option A is incorrect, because it is giving a very myopic view of how you can reduce cost, which may not be your root cause. Okay. So let's look at option B. Modify the project scope to provide equivalent functionality as the competition to align with their cost structure. Again, it is just like trying to catch a missed bus, right? So now modifying the project scope, it will call for a lot of change management procedures which you need to do, and you are just sort of copying the competition. Again, are you providing value for your customers with this sort of strategy, right? So that is also something which ideally should not be done, and that is why option B is also incorrect. Let's look at option C. Conduct a value engineering assessment of project components, okay, very important, to maximize delivery efficiency and accelerate timeline. This is what probably is one of the correct options, because value engineering means that you look at all the aspects of the project, not only people, but you look at infrastructure, you look at fixed costs, variable costs, direct costs, indirect costs. So you look at all the aspects of your costs and do a value engineering assessment of what is the Pareto, or your 80-20 of your high cost footfall of your project, right? So what is that 20% of your project components that is driving 80% of your project costs, okay? So that is sort of a value engineering exercise, and you do not only focus on people, you focus on multiple aspects. So that is why option C seems to be the correct answer choice, or one of the correct answer choices, because the question is mentioning that you need to choose two answer choices for this question. So let's look at option D. Compress the remaining project phases to complete the original deliverables while minimizing indirect expenses. Again, a myopic view, right? Because what about the direct expense? What about the fixed cost? What about the variable cost? So same problem as option A for this option as well. So that is why option D is also incorrect. Now let's look at option E. Establish an iterative delivery approach to progressively optimize business value within the allocated financial constraints. So basically it is saying that you follow sort of a prototype approach, or sort of a iterative/incremental delivery approach to progressively optimize business value. Then again, it is a different way of saying that you need to do a value exercise within the allocated financial constraints. So option E also seems to be the correct answer choice to this question. So the correct answer to the question is option C, which is suggesting to conduct a value engineering assessment for the project components to maximize delivery. And option E, which is to establish sort of an agile track for the project to progressively optimize business value. So the correct answer to this question is option C and option E.
And finally, let's move on to question number 5. Remember, the target is to get all the 5 out of the 5 questions correct, okay? However, the minimum expectation is that you will get at least 4 out of the 5 questions correct to consider yourself fairly well prepared for your PMP exam. You can assess your level of preparation according to this scorecard. So Here comes question number 5.
So question number 5, guys, please read the question and try to solve it before we take this together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Okay, so let's get started. A scheduled user story within an iteration remained incomplete due to technical impediment that surfaced 72 hours earlier but remain unaddressed. Now, the development team cleared the obstacle during the subsequent daily Scrum ceremony. However, the project manager seeks to establish preventive measures against similar occurrences moving forward. Okay, so it is not talking about solving something now, but it is talking about basically learn from experience and solving something that might come in this project in future or in some other project with some other team in future. Okay. So there was a scheduled user story within an iteration which remained incomplete, and it was sort of not addressed before 72 hours, and that caused major delays or sort of caused major challenges with the project. And the project manager wants to learn from this experience and seeks to establish preventive measures. Okay, so what should the project manager do? And if you have solved my Q&A sessions over the last, like, let's say 24 months or more than 2 years since I've been putting out this Q&A sessions for free on YouTube for all the PMP exam aspirants, you know that we have tackled these kind of questions previously as well. And even before we go into the answer options, think about the agile ceremony, which learns from experience and builds systemic fixes to the project so that kind of issues do not occur in future. And even if they occur, there is a very specific and, let's say, demonstrated way of solving those issues. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's look at the options one by one. Option A: during the team retrospective session, investigate the underlying cause of the barrier. Okay, and I believe we are all on the same page that the key agile ceremony that talks about learning from experience and building systemic fixes for the future is agile retrospective. And when I say for the future, it does mean that within that project as well, and it does mean that documenting that lessons learned so that other project teams can learn from that as well. Okay, so option A seems to be the correct answer choice, but let's hold that for now and evaluate option B, C and D and check whether we have a more better option. Let's look at option B. Throughout the stakeholder demonstration, discuss the technical obstacle faced. Discuss. So again, it's a pointless exercise. What will you do by just discussing, and how it is providing me confidence as a project manager that these kind of issues will be mitigated if they occur moving forward in the project or any other project. Discuss is a very open-ended term, right? So of course, option B is incorrect. Let's look at option C. At the next iteration preparation workshop, explore the fundamental issue. Again, explore. It is quite exploratory and it does not give any definitive evidence of whether I will be able to find a systematic fix for this issue or not. Okay. Again, very broad-ended option. That is option C is also incorrect. Let's look at option D. Issue a formal notification to all the development participants. Again, very, very broad. This option basically doesn't have any head or tail of it. Issuing a formal notification to all development participants. Again, how do you define development participants? Like, it can mean different things to different stakeholders for your project. So option D is clear-cut and incorrect answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option A, that during the team retrospective session, investigate the underlying causes of the barrier. And as I was mentioning at the beginning of this exercise, the agile ceremony that talks about building systemic fixes for problems that has been faced and fixed, and documenting it in lessons learned for making sure that this project team or any other project team learns from that and reapplies that fixes or risk responses if that issues occur in the future, is the retrospective ceremony. So with that line of reasoning as well, option A seems to stand out from option B, C and D, and the correct answer to this question is option A.
I hope you liked the session, guys. Please press the like button and subscribe to this channel if you really found this session helpful for your PMP exam preparation. Also, do not get demotivated if you have scored less, okay? Remember, the key is to analyze and learn from your mistakes and course correct now, so that you do not get caught out during the actual PMP exam, okay? Thank you for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.